Welcome this evening to our fifth and final webinar in our Natural Habitat, the Biosphere Challenge. So for the past 8 weeks, we have been doing a different task every week to protect and connect with the environment in these our shared environments in the Dublin Bay and Kerry UNESCO biospheres and beyond as well. The theme of this week's webinar is Nature and Culture Connect, and that's part of the tagline on the Dublin Bay Biosphere website, which describes the biosphere as a place where people, nature and culture connect. And now I'm going to ask Dean to comment on what that means to him or what that means in the context of the biosphere.
Thanks very much, Nessa, for throwing me under the bus there. No, I'm only messing. Biospheres are all about people and nature interacting, and in a sensible and in a safe way. We want people to enjoy and appreciate these wonderful habitats that we have. But at the same time, we want them to enjoy it in a way that we're not causing harm to those environments. So, being mindful of not disturbing wildlife, particularly, in our biosphere where we have brent geese that have huge migrations to bulk up, ready for long flights, and not just the brent geese. We have nesting birds in amongst our dunes on North Bull Island. That don't appreciate dogs, chasing after them. But these places are great places to walk. But it's just kind of a reminder to people to, follow rules and keeping dogs on leash, with the exception of the southern beach area and the like. But like I say, we want people to get out there. We want people to enjoy it. We want people to appreciate it and work to protect it. And part of the Biosphere Challenge is working to protect our biosphere, and it's not just the Biosphere Challenge that we have. We have a number of other programs aimed at different people to get them involved and interested in working to help protect our wonderful habitats. So if you want to know more about what we're doing, please feel free to check out our website, which is www.dublinbaybiosphere.ie. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on the matter. Pass you back to you, Nessa.
Thanks, Dean. That's great. We've got two incredible speakers this evening. Sophie von Maltzen is a visual artist, a curator, an educator, a researcher, and her practice fuses socially engaged art and landscape architecture with the aim to improve human relationships with the more natural environment. And Celine as well is a community living coach and nonviolent communication facilitator who I lived with and worked with in Cool Eco Community in County Offaly recently. And here's a description of Celine's presentation. Living in a domination-based culture, we have lost trust in life itself to take care of our needs. When we rewild ourselves by fully experiencing our feelings and needs and turn to nature to nourish us, we create a new, ancestrally inspired, life-connected culture. So I don't know about you, but I'm very excited to hear more about these interesting topics. I'm going to give you a little look at what we've been doing so far with the Biosphere Challenge before we get into the talks. And I just have a few photographs to show you of the progress and the efforts that the participants have been making and sharing in the Facebook group. So let me share my screen. So as I was saying, we've been going for 8 weeks now. We've got 2 more challenges left, and I will announce those at the end of this little slideshow. So week 1 was do nothing, put away the lawnmower and spend 1 hour observing nature. So this is our garden where we put away the lawnmower a long time ago and have been spending time observing all the wonderful insects and flowers that have been appearing since then. I went out to the sea with Oisín and we spotted these bananas of the sea, as we call them. In the distance there, you can see some seals. And Carmel Whelan took this incredible photograph of a bee pollinating a sunflower while she was observing a field of sunflowers. I'm going to speed up a little and whiz through these. here's some pictures of people rewilding their gardens and the kind of things that appear when you let nature do her thing. Week 2 is Grow the Wildest Flower Pot. And you can see, I'll share some links later on. You'll be able to see the video that the Bee Time artists made explaining this challenge, which they made up themselves a while back. I found it was quite challenging, not conceptually. I was planning to dig all the weeds up out of my vegetable patch and create a wildflower pot with all of them in it. But I'm just so tired after being in lockdown for so long that it was just very difficult to dig the soil. So some of our participants had more luck with that. This is a balcony full of pollinator plants. And Owen Kelly might like to comment on this beautiful wildflower pot because it has quite a lovely theme. And Owen, maybe you'd like to explain the name of your flower pot and why you chose.
Willie Lassie Go, because it's a combination of some wild heather and some thyme, and from the lyrics of the traditional song, Willie Go Lassie Go, the blooming heather and the wild mountain thyme. So that was a bit sentimental, but it looked beautiful.
Beautiful. So it's like a little bit of wilderness in a pot. Gorgeous. Week 3 was Talk to Your Neighbors. And we thought about different ways of communicating amongst our community. And I found this beautiful notice by somebody in my local community. We also heard from Juno Tulutra in Madagascar, who through talking to his neighbors, gathered a group of 30 volunteers to clean the streets and plant trees in Fort Dauphin, Madagascar. Week 4 is Compost with Your Community. Cool Eco Community gave us their expertise on this with a short video. You can see all of these videos on my YouTube, and I'll share the link after this. Here's Martin building the compost boxes. And they've taken composting to another level. This is their compost toilet, which Celine mentioned to us earlier on. We both miss the compost toilet because it just feels like a really lovely way to return nutrients to the soil, and instead of flushing them into the ocean, you're putting them back into the soil and feeding plants and feeding the soil. Week 5, grow something you can eat. So by sourcing food closer to home and growing organically, we can fight climate change and biodiversity loss and also have much tastier food. So here are Carmel's tomatoes on her balcony. And this rhubarb and these blackberries are from my garden and my local park. People got extra bonus points if they could plant something that insects could also use, that could also eat. This is a nasturtium that Pete Cuthbert planted, and this is popular with bumblebees, and it's also a good alternative to your cabbages for the cabbage white butterfly caterpillars to eat. Week 6 was Record Your Local Wildlife, and we had a great response in the Facebook group to this one. Butterflies, this one is from Owen. He's got 3 species of vanessid butterflies here, the peacock, the small tortoiseshell, and the red admiral, all on one buddleia. And this gorgeous little wren, some pigeons in the city center, and this lovely heron that Christian sent in. And someone can remind me what this is, bindweed, I believe, and a lovely orchid. We even got photos sent in from the US. This is a swallowtail caterpillar that Deb Putman has in her garden, and this is an awesome looking tiger beetle. Week 7 was the 2-minute beach clean. So I will actually share the link in my list of resources at the end for you to register to do the 2-minute beach clean with Clean Coasts and get your beach cleanup kit. It's a very simple activity that can make a big difference if we all try it. Here's Juno's group in Madagascar cleaning the beaches in Fort Dauphin. And they found a really fantastic use for the plastics they collected. They've been making eco bricks, and they built this bench around a fire pit at the medical center in Fort Dauphin. Even in Zambia, although they haven't got a marine coastline, my friend Chembe did a 2-minute cleanup on the streets in Lusaka. So week 8 was create or explore a watery habitat. And we had Ellie Rotheray from the Buzz Club talking to us about hoverfly lagoons. This is one I found in my local park, which is like a little natural spot for hoverfly larvae to develop. And that hoverfly on the right is the Kilkenny Jersey hoverfly, which is one that has aquatic larvae. And Owen made this fantastic hoverfly lagoon following her instructions, with all the leaf litter for the larvae to pupate in and everything. People explored rock pools and coastlines and canals. And I found this little water measurer in a lake in Mayo. So there's 2 weeks left. And before I announce the last 2 challenges, I actually want to share a video which Owen has made for us about the challenge, the one which was to create or explore a watery habitat.
Hi and welcome to my garden. I live down here in the far southwest of Ireland on the Mizen Peninsula. I've been a keen horticulturalist and wildlife gardener for over 40 years. I'm really lucky here to be surrounded by one of the most dramatic landscapes you can find on our island. My gardening philosophy is based around the very ancient elemental aspects of the earth, wind, fire and water. Water dominates our landscape, from the iconic Barley Cove beach to the small coves dotted along the coast and hidden rock pools far below the cliff's edge. Streams feed from the mountains and natural springs, which bring life, the blood in the land's veins. A pond of any size can provide so much interest for a garden. The simple beauty of the light reflecting on the water, as well as the ecology surrounding it. Like a watering hole in the jungles of the Borneo or an oasis in the desert. Water attracts all sorts of mammals, birds, amphibians and insects into our own gardens. Last year, just before the lockdown, I bought a second-hand solid moulded pond from a friend who was restructuring their garden. It was around €50. I put it within view of the house in order to be able to observe it often. The pond has come a long way in a short time. I planted a number of native plants such as brandy bottle lilies in the water and yellow flags around the edge. Today the pond is one of my favourite features in my garden. It does take some maintenance, but it is work I enjoy. The way the light plays on the water and the constant movement, the sounds of nature really do help me feel more connected and a part of the natural world around me. I can be easily distracted by yet another find, under the water or on the surface. I'm fascinated by our pond snails, the way they rise to the surface like whales in a little mini ocean. I planted Lady's Mantle, one of our beautiful native plants, and I also encouraged some ferns to naturalise around the edge. The long grasses also soften the surrounds. We relocated a couple of tadpoles we found in a dried up pond on our land. They seem to be thriving in their new environment. I hope you enjoyed this quick tour of my garden pond.
I love that video, especially the challenge accepted at the end. Thanks, Owen, so much for making that. It's he must be laying down in the grass. A wise decision. Okay, so that's all this creativity and videos and everything will give you some inspiration for our next task, which is completely lost it. Okay, how about I add further to the suspense by announcing the next two tasks in between Celine and Sophie's talks.
Yes, I'm very happy to talk and show. I'm really keen on pictures. I'm an image person, an image addict. So I shall waste no time at all. I have a little bit of a difficulty in editing images. So I hope you didn't see how many slides you're going to look at in the next 20 minutes. Basically, my practice, I'm an artist, but I'm also a qualified landscape architect, and I lectured the School of Architecture at UCD in the School of Landscape Architecture. But what I've been interested in really for the last 20 years, but going stronger and stronger in that direction, is, you know, explore and find and fight for an aesthetic, you know, a sort of new urban aesthetic and even actually rural that goes, you know, that becomes a tool with which we can negotiate our environmental and ecological climate crisis. So it's really an alternative design practice I'm interested in. I just want to, you know, I'm really interested where aesthetics come from. How do humans perceive something as beautiful or not beautiful, or messy or not messy? And the other thing that is really, really important in all my projects is I strongly believe in grassroots up. Like, i.e., if you're going to design something in the public realm, let the public design. And I see myself as a facilitator and, you know, as perhaps a professional, even so I do feel I'm, you know, a very modest professional. So here's a project I started in 2010, instigating little pocket parks on mostly leftover, you know, strips of not derelict, but sort of wasted or underused, disused lands in preferably please the inner city of Dublin, because, you know, if so, let's go to the deep of the nitty gritty. So this, I think, was project number 3, and is actually the only one that's still going. It's called Sandowns Road Pocket Park. It started in 2015. This is the resident who lived opposite this little strip of land, who contacted me and said, can you help us turn this strip of mown lawn into a pocket park? So we had design participation. So it's not consultation, it's participation meetings. She, you know, brought together, flyered the community, and we met in the local community center. And this is the resume document. And I'm actually stuck. Am I stuck? Here, that's the site. So you can see it's a really long, narrow strip. And I'm going to stop my video. It's a really long, narrow strip in Drumcondra by the railway station. And it's got, you know, it's sort of on the pavement the whole time. So that's the site prior to our intervention. And again, so these are the elements that we imagined could go in there. Not all of them, you'll see later, are there yet or will ever be there. Also, it occurred to everyone pretty quickly who came to the meetings that they really wanted it as a play park for their children. There were 2 things that people pointed out, 3 actually they wanted, 4. seating, play elements, edible, and wildlife habitats. So I'm going to just switch through them because otherwise, you know, we'll never get to any of it. That was the final sort of plan, all completely, you know, hand drawn and, you know, not terribly smart looking, because remember, we were building it ourselves too. So we didn't have to make any construction drawings. It got quite a lot of local press. So this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like in summer 2020. It was built, we started building in March 2016, and this is 4 years later. It's the same view. So that's again before. Lots of billboards on the wall. And this is our main building material was, you'll probably recognize the dogs. They're the ones sitting next to me now. So we had a fallen over by, I forgot which storm it was, beech tree on the farm in Westmeads. So we decided to use just the tiniest trunk of it to build the elements in this park for reasons that I'll get to. This is actually a panel I put together and applied for the Irish Landscape Institute Award. But again, it was in 2016. And I think if we did it again now, it might be more successful. It didn't win a prize. So this is us building it. Again, you know, and this is the elements just installed, and we managed to, you know, make whoever it was, you know, for the billboards to go away. I think the wall belongs to Irish Rail, and they, you know, I don't think they actually had planning for the billboards anyway. The interesting thing was that, you know, it could be, while it was built inside, it already was a playground, you know. And it wasn't, you know, dangerous either. It's what I'm really interested in, that super soft building approach. You know, that element was in, and a mother arrived with her kids. We put a blackboard up, something I'm really quite keen on, and that's been used to date, you know, for messaging. So this one says volunteers needed for whatever bit we were in. I guess we were still planting at that stage. That is actually the 1 year, it was a year old, a year after building. So they made a birthday party, and you can see a little slide, and you can see a table, which is what do you call it? An electric spool roll, and these little timber elements. So I'm just going to look at the, you know, the elements in it that I think might be interesting for you to hear about. So it's a play pocket park. And I'm really mad, you know, I could now go off and talk an hour solidly about how shocking I find it that play elements in every city in Europe look the same and are made by the same manufacturers. I don't understand why they can't be more site specific. And I don't think I have to actually comment on these pictures, because you'll probably get why I think these are interesting elements. You know, this is putting eyes on the horse, and the blackboard, a huge success. I put this slide in because I believe in play elements that allow for, you know, solitary play or a group of children. And, you know, a simple trunk, a complete balancing challenge. And this again was at the 1 year birthday party. And here the kids have, you know, they're playing with flowers. And this is a great picture. This kid is obviously enjoying picking up rubbish, which is great. And, you know, it's part of it. I just put this in as a contrast, you know, to the playgrounds I really hope in the future we'll see less of. And yeah, that's it. And then this is really, I'm really, you know, interested in urban habitats, and then being part of the, you know, microgreen infrastructure. I call it, you know, a microgreen infrastructure stepping stone. So it's, you know, it's providing all the ecosystem services. So the next slides will just show you, it's just images of the planting over 4 years. So that was just, you know, planted. And they're all from, like, yeah, 2016 to 2020. And I think you begin to see, you know, that this is really an aesthetic that you wouldn't wouldn't really have in a council designed or maintained space, you know. And I think you can figure out there's a more biodiversity value in it. This is an interesting point I battle against. Sadly, people never realize that plants will actually change and grow. So this is a cotoneaster when we planted it. And this is it in 2020. And yes, that's what plants do. Yet it's it's one of the reasons why it's so sad to say that white people, council people, but also locals are, scared of plants because they grow and change. Here, look at the passion flowers just planted on the trellises, beech tree, I think saplings. So, and look at it in 2017, really a year later, and 18. So, it's just, that's what plants do, but people don't seem to be aware that plants do grow. So look what it looked like in 2020. This is not even 2021. And this photo is interesting because it starts suggesting why, there are problems with this park as well, because people feel it looks too wild. There was someone sleeping just there in the summer of 2019 and 2020 under that fuchsia shrub right next to the balancing beam. And then again, edible fruit. I learned a lot on that as well. This is just a photo, was so beautiful, of the passion flower. And then the fruit, it's a south-facing wall and they really ripen, so you can eat them. So this is me eating a passion fruit and asking someone to make a photo, because every time I go there and eat anything of any of the fruiting trees, the cherries ripen beautifully as well too. People look at me if I was mad. Like, what are you doing? Are you really eating things from a plant? Community. So it's being used, it is not like, oh God, I can't believe I can't think of the word now. It's not like, a community park that's gated where people have their vegetable plots. What are they called? Sorry. It's really, open park to everyone, and because it's adjacent to the pavement that children walk through across the play elements, and people just stop. There's a bench. You can see the Deliveroo person who's not part of, I can't even remember which particular event was going on. I think it's a time as well. And Nessa, you were in this photo. I remember that day specifically because this was a Romanian family who, were really, really shy, and we kind of, waved at them, and if it would have been any more enclosed, there's no way they would have walked in and been part of this insect investigation you were doing at the time.
That was
and again, I like this photo because, look at the ladies on the left. It's a real, community of location meeting. Because if you think about your local community in an urban area, people seem to, meet through activities, but not so much through location. I think someone once said to me, what the church used to be in olden days, this is what these little parks can become. People who otherwise wouldn't meet because they don't actually have the same interests do meet and talk. Again, this is our, board, the Blackboard, heavily used. Of course, there's a social media page, again, also, well used. This is Culture Night event. And this was very sad. It's the shopkeeper from the shop around the corner died. I think, was it this year or last year? He was chasing someone who stole something from his shop. So the community planted a little tree, and they're using it. It's becoming this I don't know, platform. And then we have events. I say we because I've actually become part of this community. They're friends through just helping build it. So that's something Nessa and I did together for I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry, I'm not Irish at all, I'm German, for Cruinnú Nog, an insect investigation. And it was just, it was just one, and we do willow weaving. the kids are weaving. I'm putting up, these really fragile structures that would last forever and not get vandalized, in more or less, D1, which again, and this is an insect hotel. Just more photos, because I like photos. Again, I love, the man on the left is walking by and observing, and yet sort of, being part of it. So the kids made these panels that we put up on the wall, drawing the insects they found. Next chapter, natural elements, natural decay. That's of huge importance to me. I believe that it's, it's very cheap to be building. Yes.
Your slides may be going a little slower than you. Would you mind showing us just a couple of slides back? I think we missed a couple of things. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you. No, I love, just interrupt me. I much prefer a dialogue.
Cool.
Conversation.
Also, I just wanted to show off our kids' insect drawings.
It was so much fun, wasn't it?
It was fantastic.
They still look great, actually, the boards.
Brilliant.
And they, they came up with these great slogans, this is a community park, you're part of it. Obviously, litter is a problem. I'll get to that later. So they're saying tidy away all rubbish. Yes. I can't even remember. I think 3 of them in total. Yes. So now back to these play elements, built from beech wood. So we knew they were going to last a maximum of 4 years before they decay, but they were very cheap to build. And now I also think, it's important for everyone to understand that, that's acceptable. It's timber, it's allowed to decay, and it changes. And I think, it's beautiful. It's haptic quality changes. Look, it's the same element, newly built now 2 years later. Also, I'm quite interested in not having 2 defined shapes, so they can be used in multiple ways. And that's it, just before it gave up. So we took that element away in summer 2020. And again, here, this is when they were just newly built and installed and carved. And this photo, I think if you look at this photo, you start to understand what people who are against this pocket park are objecting. Yes?
Can I guilty with insurance?
Sure, yeah. Do you know the way you did it? And WC Council is super helpful on that. If you are a community, they will assist you, and actually the liability is with them. So the land belongs to Irish Rail, but they are responsible, and there's no one from the community who had to sign any paper or anything. So WC Council is taking the liability for it. But you see that photo, there is a problem with rubbish, because there's a table in the park and there's seating, and people love sitting there and eating their, takeaway, whatever. There's a few really good restaurants around there. And then, there's a problem. So eventually the community, I'll get to that later, they put up these rubbish bags, and once they're full, they put them to the corner of the road where they're meant to be picked up. But you see this image with the sort of decaying, play elements. 2020, DCC didn't come to mow. The community felt they shouldn't come and maintain it. And, this is that aesthetic that I'm trying to, I still think this is beautiful, maybe perhaps the rubber bags, but a lot of people would not think, they just say it's not beautiful because it's messy. And that's the thing I'm trying to change. Why do some people think this is messy? So here's what, I am involved with still. So here we are replacing one of these play elements, and the new horse came. Here it is. And now this is very interesting, the 2 Tonys. The 2 Tonys are 2 men called, both of them are called Tonys, and they live opposite. And when we built, they weren't involved in the design stage of it, because they didn't want to come to any of the meetings, because they kept saying, everything you do will just get vandalized. So when we were building it, these two nice older men walked by and kept looking at us saying, it'll all get destroyed, it'll all be destroyed. And it was quite sad. And then, you know, that's one of them, one Tony and his dog. And I'll show you the other one later. And, you know, gradually they've become the guardians of the park and the biggest fans. And it's the best thing. I mean, I should really have an interview of both of them because they can really tell you in their own words why this park is amazing. And so one Tony, interesting enough, he used to sit on this bench. He now moved to sit on the wooden horse because he says it's more comfortable and less cold than the metal. They've been trying to campaign for, you know, just bench cover made from timber, but didn't get it. And the other Tony's there in the background, he's rubbish picker #1. And he always, you know, has a picker hanging on a rubbish picker, whatever you call it, next to the blackboard. So vandalism, antisocial behavior. So this here is what I call play vandalism, you know. This sculpture just eventually got rocked away and rotted and rocked away. So that would happen quite a lot. And that obviously finally will happen, it happened also to our little willow sculptures, yeah. So I think that's something to just take into account. There's a slide, and the slide actually got stolen. And 2 weeks later, a new slide appeared in the space. And I couldn't go to Dublin. I was stuck in Westmeath. So then, you know, MOM Services Limited installed it. But now this is the table. The table's become its own separate chapter because that's really speaks most about the problems of this park. When we put in this electrical spool, I knew that there wasn't another outdoor public table in the north inner city, not one I can think of. But the community wanted it. So we discussed it, and I said, well, you know, I mean, it won't only be parents, you know, with little children playing sitting there. So we installed it. And it was, you know, always used. You couldn't walk by there. The moment it wasn't raining, someone would be sitting at this table. At some community events, the children put a mosaic on top of it. Here's someone, I love this photo, reading the newspaper in the dry summer of, was it 2018? These people were working actually, and I was there and just doing a bit of maintenance, and they told me, could I please, you know, not, I think I just only had 20 minutes and I wanted to, I don't know, sort out the passion flower, and they said to me, you see, we're working here, can you do that another time? Which, you know, was quite shocking, but in a way it was also good because I really felt it was their space, their community space, and I was, you know, what was I doing? And then what happened, in February this year, the table disappeared. And what turned out what happened, it was witnessed by someone who then posted in response to this. And what had happened is that the person who bought the house opposite and made it all look terribly smart, he'd complained to Dublin City Council every week, saying he didn't want the antisocial behaviour. This is during the second lockdown, 6th of February this year, that was happening at this table. And could that table please be moved? He complained to Dublin City Council. And then, you know, this, I thought this is interesting, these responses on the Facebook. My kids time themselves jumping across the stumps, which were the table chairs each morning. They were disappointed. And then there's another post where, hold on, the next post.
Sorry, Sophie?
Yes?
This is absolutely fascinating, but I can only give you 2 more minutes.
Yes, I'm done. So then someone says 5 guys sitting there drinking cans. So that's antisocial behavior. See, I'm German, I come from Berlin, and, you know, drinking a can in a public space isn't really, you know, deemed as antisocial behavior. But all good. The community is dealing with it, dealing with DCC, and they just got a new blackboard that was next to the K. And there's one of the Tonys, and you know, a girl who's been part of this project since she was 6 and is now 10. So it's all good. But you know, there's sort of some, I think I've outlined enough of it, and I've talked for 24 minutes. I'm sorry, 4 minutes too long. I'll stop.
That was fascinating.
Absolutely amazing. I wish we had about 3 hours, because I know
I'm
that
sorry.
it's going to be just as great. But
Really
Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
amazing. There must be questions. Anyone have questions?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I just want to make a point that you know, the biggest point there was the community engagement. You know,
Yeah.
it's the old baseball movie, build it and they will come, and that's definitely what's happened here. You know, you've created something that's for the community, and they've taken ownership of it, and it's you know, real positive by the look of it. So, you know, well done. That's fantastic stuff.
You.
I'd have so many questions. I want to know how, did you have to engage with the two Tonys to get them involved, to get them to change their mind, or is it just simply from them observing what was going on across the road from their houses?
Yeah, they just engaged with the park. You know, they engaged with the pocket park, and they slowly appropriated it, because to be boringly fair enough, you know, all the people who were very engaged from the beginning were quite middle class. Which really wouldn't surprise you. You know, there's some really good schools in the area, like, you know, national schools, and suddenly, you know, all these people who all live next to each other, like, you know, they've all become really firm friends, and let's make, you know, face it, they wouldn't have met otherwise. But what's happening now is a person who's against the table. He's a direct neighbor of the Tonys, and you know, it's again aesthetics. You know, he just doesn't want anyone. You know, there's definitely a gentrification element as well, and he doesn't want anyone. I keep joking him. I said, if I, you know, had a Porsche and drove there in a Porsche and unwrapped a bottle of champagne and sat at that table and had it, you know, in a smart, he wouldn't mind actually. But if I came, you know, in a tracksuit with a few teeth missing, he would object. Anyway, listen, you're just getting me talking again.
We'll have to have another webinar with you again. I think there's too much to cover. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions before there'll be more time for questions at the end. So you can ruminate on that before asking later on if you like. Then I'll announce our next 2 tasks. And we'll move on to Celine's presentation, and then hopefully we will have time for some more questions at the end. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you for listening.
So we've just been talking about creativity and creating things for the community, and the next task we have features the picture of one of our insect murals from St. Anne's Road Pocket Park. And the task is to create something that inspires love for our natural habitat. Or you can expand on that and create something that expresses your experience of the biosphere, or expresses a message that you want people to think about the environment. So really be as creative and free with this as you like. It can be anything from a quick doodle on a napkin to a fully produced musical theater production, or a whole park if you wish. And we'd love to see what you get up to on our Facebook page, which I will, maybe Sachita might put the link in the chat for me. That would be great. There's a picture of Sophie helping with one of the murals at the school where we worked with the kids. And there it is in situ. What you call weeds, we call insect paradise. And then week 10, oh no, this is first. This is just a an artist I've seen in Killiney who makes this incredible sculpture out of things that she finds in the sea, presumably during her 2-minute beach cleanup. So that just inspired me. I like it because it's beautiful, but it also it conveys the plastic situation, but also what we can do to help clean it up. And then week 10, I want you to feast on wild foraged food to celebrate the end of the 10-week challenge. So actually, I want to show you something. So if you can see what I'm holding up here, it's a big bowl of blackberries. And I picked those from my garden this afternoon. And that's what nature rewards you with when you let her run wild. So I'll be making some nice tarts with those. So I'll just share that one last slide. So at the moment we've got blackberries, elderberries are on their way. Cook them first. Do not eat raw elderberries. And you may get the tail end of the meadow sweet for making drinks like elderflower. So I'm going to put, Sachita is actually going to help me out by putting links to resources for all 10 of the challenges into the chat box. So you can click on whatever takes your fancy, and I'll also post those in the Facebook group. So before I take up any more of Celine's time, I will invite her to talk to us, please.
Okay, so to get started, it's going to be a big shift in gears. So I'd like to ask everybody just to take maybe just 2 deep breaths, and we can shift into a different way of thinking. Okay, so I'm actually going to invite you all to join me in a kind of creative visualization, and I will guide you through it. And I also want to release any pressure of if you actually visualize anything or not, but you can still engage with your imagination however feels good to you. You can do it kind of sensing with your body the images, or you might actually imagine images, or you might just listen to the words coming in and see how it affects your body and how you feel in the moment. Okay. And I want to confess that this is my first time doing this particular guided meditation, so you all get to start a new journey with me today. Okay, so I invite you to just close your eyes, make yourselves comfortable, deepen your breathing, settle into your body. And I'd like you to imagine that you're swimming. And if it's hard for you to imagine that you're swimming, see if you can remember the last time that you were swimming. See if you can imagine or remember the feel of the water on your skin. Maybe you think of your favorite place to swim. I'm imagining floating on my back in a lake. And see if you can connect to the sensation of buoyancy, of being held by the water as you float. Very effortless. Totally relaxed, cool, refreshing. Stresses fade away. And you're part of the place where you are. And as you're floating there in the water, maybe you imagine looking up and you see stars, the roundness of the sky above you. And you're held by the place where the stars and the water meet. And in this relaxed place, being held, floating in the water, you become aware of an umbilical cord connected to your belly button. And on the other end, nature. You're umbilically connected to nature, floating in this water, looking up the warm embrace of the stars. And through this connection, you're receiving nourishment. And it's effortless. You don't have to try, you don't have to earn, you don't have to do. We're just opening our hearts and our physical senses and receiving nourishment directly through this primal connection to nature. We don't even have to ask, we're just given to. And see if you can let yourself receive with an open heart. See if you can let yourself just be there, feel whatever it is you're feeling. Imagine how safe you might feel, how nourished you might feel, what a sense of possibility and hope in the future there might be when you receive this direct nourishment from nature, from life itself. Just take one more pause, one more breath to breathe in this nourishment. I want to invite your memory to see if it can remember a time. Maybe you were walking in nature, or you were looking at a beautiful view, where you had a similar sensation of peace and nourishment. Something you experienced in the physical world that felt so peaceful and nourishing. And when you're ready, I invite you back into the room. I wonder if one person might like to unmute and share with me how that was for you, any sensations you experienced or anything you may have seen or felt.
It was dreamy.
Dreamy.
I've had a lot of lovely swims recently, and I was picturing all the different types of water and what they all the different ones felt like.
Does one more person want to share?
I was brought back to a place where I used to play as a kid. Yeah, it was a really a little pool as part of a river that flowed through my city, and it was just nice to be back in that area and looking at the willows and just taking vibe, really. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of why we went into that kind of meditation. So babies are born with the operational trust that their needs will be met by the people around them and also by the world around them. When they're in the womb, all of their needs are instantly met without needing to ask. And then they emerge from this beautiful place where they've been held and nourished and safe. They emerge into the world completely trusting that somebody cares about them, somebody's going to take care of them, and that their needs matter, that they matter, and that life itself will respond to them. So every single one of us is alive today because someone took care of us when we were infants and unable to take care of ourselves. And at some point between that moment of being a child, being a baby, and fully trusting that our needs matter and that our needs will be attended to by the communities that we're born into and by life itself, we become adults with less trust that our needs will be attended to, that we can ask for things that we want. I'm wondering if any of you have any ideas from your own lives or from just what you know about the way the world works. If just a few of you want to name, either you can unmute yourself and name it, or you can put it into the chat. What are some of the things that might happen in somebody's life that go from being a child fully trusting that my needs matter and people are going to take care of me without earning, without deserving, to becoming adults with less trust that other people will contribute to our needs or that life itself will contribute to us? Any guesses or ideas of some things that might happen?
A traumatic event.
Yep, trauma happens. Homelessness, hunger, neglect. Yeah.
Exams in school.
Yes, I was gonna say school happens. Yeah. Yes. Any other ideas? We hear the word no. We hear not right now. We hear stop crying, you know, social disobedience. Yeah, so I don't want to focus a lot on that because we all have had visceral experiences. But I do want to anchor it in reality, you know, that all of us are born with this trust and all of us have some kind of experiences that reduce our trust. So rewilding ourselves then is a conscious practice that we can engage in to become more childlike, to actually give ourselves permission to experience our feelings, to experience our needs, and to dare to express them with the same joy and exuberance or sadness that children express. Rewilding ourselves means choosing now to support ourselves and to support each other, to kind of undo the rules of politeness and undo the social programming that kind of puts a cap on how much self-expression we're allowed and how much feeling we actually feel. Connected to that then is actually receiving unconditionally, actually receiving support and nourishment from our friends, from our family, from nature, without having to earn it or deserve it. And similarly, giving unconditionally. As we begin expressing our own needs, as we begin expressing the experience of being in this body, other people are moved through our organisms because it's my firm belief that humans care about other humans, and that when feelings and needs are made visible, we are more likely to respond to them. It's hard to offer care, it's hard to offer nourishment to someone if we're not sharing what it is that we're wanting or longing for. So as we begin to rewild ourselves by actually visibly expressing our feelings and needs, we make it easier for other people to do that, and we can inspire a culture shift so that not only am I receiving unconditionally without earning or deserving, I'm offering gifts from my heart to others unconditionally without them needing to earn or deserve it. Part of this is the underlying principle of enoughness, that if I take exactly what I need, no more and no less, that there's enough for everyone. And right now, it's hard to believe that because we live in a world where some people are taking much more than they need. Other people are not being offered as much as they need. And someone like me who so cares, I went through a period in my 20s of taking much less than I needed, and then having impacts on my health and well-being for that. So it's hard to believe that, but when you have this kind of attuned connection to life itself, spiritually or viscerally, physically through growing a garden, we begin to tune into, yeah, this actually might be an operating principle of how life works. Every species offers and receives. Trees, receive nutrients through their roots and expirate oxygen that we need to breathe. So that's part of the way the ecosystems work, is this unconditional giving and receiving from all the species on the planet. Are there any questions about what I'm saying so far? No, okay. So the reason why I invited you into the image of having, even in your adult body, an umbilical connection to life, an umbilical connection to nature, is that you can go out and turn to nature and spirit as a strategy for attending to your human needs. Sometimes we have a sense of scarcity when we are limited in the amount of options that we have. If I'm only thinking about money, or I'm only thinking about my partner being like, let's say I have, I'm feeling sad and lonely, and I notice I'm feeling sad and lonely, and I realize, wow, I really want a hug. I really want connection right now. And maybe I'm single and the world tells me that the only place for that is in a romantic partnership. So then I might remember, oh, I have this beautiful umbilical connection to life itself, and I might choose to go forest bathing to meet my longing for connection. And I might actually invite this kind of meditative quality, this open heart energy, and I might actually have a direct experience of nourishment, of connection from the forest, or wherever is where you are and whatever you feel called to. I want to invite you, as part of rewilding ourselves, to notice how I'm feeling, to notice what I'm longing for, and to allow nature to be one of the ways that we nourish those really primal human needs within myself. And I think if we do this, we can actually create a new culture of seeing humans as part of nature, rather than kind of a separate thing that we need to virginally protect, like, oh, let's just leave nature alone and let it do its thing. If you read Braiding Sweetgrass, there's research in it. Yay! I strongly recommend reading Breaking Sweetgrass. But she did research in harvesting techniques for harvesting sweetgrass. Has everybody heard this before? I won't tell it to you if you've heard it already. You haven't heard it? Okay. So the research was, which is the better technique for harvesting sweetgrass? Is it better to cut the sweetgrass, or is it better to kind of pull it out by the roots? And then they had a control group where they left the sweetgrass alone and didn't harvest it at all, so they could compare. And the interesting thing that they discovered in the research was that it didn't actually matter whether they cut it or pulled it up by the roots. What made a difference was harvesting it at all. So the control group that didn't get harvested actually did worse. It grew back less than the two groups that had been harvested by either technique. So this is, again, more evidence that nature actually needs not necessarily like intervention from humans, but a relationship with humans. If we're turning to nature for our spiritual and emotional needs, if we're turning to nature for our physical needs and our well-being needs, and we're engaging in friendship, like some plants are my friends. Yarrow is my friend. I've lived in many different countries, and sometimes it's really hard to be a foreigner. But when I see yarrow, literally everywhere I go, I feel a little bit of home. We can engage in relationships with nature. We can have a giving and a receiving, where just like I attune to my friends and get to know how they feel, get to read their facial expressions, know what they're longing for, we can actually attune through relationship to a place, through relationship with nature. And I actually start to hear requests. I can actually start to notice something being needed by that place. It might be like we saw in the park of picking up rubbish. If we're just walking by out of relationship with the place, we may not actually even see the rubbish. It might actually be there and we just don't take it in. We don't notice it. We're not attuned to the place. But when I am open to receiving from nature, I'm also open to noticing what is needed. And I think that this can become a pathway to inspire climate change action through intrinsic motivation, rather than kind of logical arguments of why someone should care about climate change, but by inviting humanity back into relationship with the places where they are and with nature. And through actually, again, through rewilding ourselves, through feeling how we feel. If I actually feel, like allow myself to experience the terror that I feel about climate change, if I invite other people into actually feeling, physically, viscerally experiencing the anger that they probably are feeling when they see things happening in the world, then we're moved into action intrinsically. And we can then become the ancestors. I'm wrapping up, Nessa. I think it's time to wrap up. 2 minutes, perfect. So as we do this, we create a new ancestral culture. We become the ancestors who changed the way we were living, who preserved this intrinsic biology of love, of the openness to giving and receiving unconditionally, the feeling our feelings and expressing our needs and receiving other people's needs, who remembered how to receive the gifts offered by nature and spirit, and who remembered how to listen, how to hear the requests that nature has for us to respond to. And then we became the ancestors who dared to respond, who dared to ask, and to love through the work of our hands, in relationship with and communion with nature and humanity, in community with past and future generations. That is me.
I love it. Thanks, Celine. It's beautiful.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions for Celine? I'm wondering if you have anything to say about foraging, for our foraging
Yes,
test.
thank you. I did have something I wanted to say about it. I think it's so perfect. I think it could be a really fun experiment for you to go for a forage just normally and see what happens. And then go for a forage, but before you go, try this meditation out. Put yourself back into that place of the umbilical connection and do however feels good to you, but actually give yourself space to feel sensually in your being this direct connection to life itself and allow yourself to experience the sensation of being nourished. And then go for a forage and see what happens. I bet it would be a different experience. You might find something you didn't see before. You could really be scientific about it and go in the same place. You know, I could tell you stories. Do I have time for a story? I can tell a short story.
Short story.
Short story. So one time I was going for a walk and I had just started the walk and I realized I was hungry. And I thought to myself, I don't want to turn back and go home and get some food because I just started this walk. So I'm just going to keep walking. And then I had this kind of visceral experience that I'm describing to you of life itself. I was looking at the trees saying to me, nature saying to me, offering nourishment if I would like to receive it. And I said, yes. And I kind of sensed myself receiving nourishment just from life. And then literally that second, a car pulls up to me and it's someone that I know from the neighborhood and she hands me an orange. And she's like, hey, Celine, do you want an orange?
Whoa, that's very direct response.
So this is why I want to share this. Imagine what would happen then if you tried this before you go foraging.
Lovely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned braiding sweetgrass. Because she also says some very beautiful things about the gifts that nature gives us, like wild strawberries in particular. That's a lovely passage.
Yes, I think the strawberry story is a good example of hearing the request from nature when she as a child felt moved to cover the runners up with soil and basically plant new plants. And she's just a child and responding to what life is moving her to do.
Gorgeous. Thank you. So I'll open it up to our webinar participants to ask questions to you and to Sophie, and to each other. And if you have any questions for the participants,
I
have a question. Sorry.
Yes, you go.
I have a question. Like, I know it's great speakers. It's amazing. Thank you so much. If you mentioned foraging, like, okay, like, do you have any suggestions? Like, we can just go for a walk anywhere. Is that what you meant? Or and even if you like identify something, how do we know it's safe to eat it? You know, like I know there are things like plant ID apps and things like that where you can identify plants and flowers. But do you have any other suggestions how to forage safe and healthy food, maybe?
Nessa, do you want to answer that? I have ideas, but you want to answer?
I can say, yeah. So Sajda, my glamorous assistant, is putting some resources in the chat there. And one of the ones that she'll put in for that task is a guy called Robin Harford, I think is his name. And he has a website called Eat Weeds, a wild food foraging guide to the edible and medicinal wild plants of Britain and Ireland. That is an absolutely gorgeous resource. And then when it comes to making sure that you identify things correctly, which is a very, very good point, which I meant to emphasize as well. Don't eat anything that you're not confident you can identify, especially not if it's a mushroom. Then there are quite a few people very interested in plants in our Facebook group. And there are also some really good Facebook groups where people help each other identify things. The plant apps can be a little unreliable. I definitely wouldn't use that as your final port of call if you're about to eat something. but there are some good tree identification websites and wildflower ones. I'll have a look now and put up some links, some extra links on those. Celine, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say what I did, which is it helps to have a friend who knows things. So asking, going on walks with somebody who can do a plant ID walk. The other thing I did was I joined Facebook groups. So there's a couple like local Irish like Facebook foraging groups, and I just lurk there, and people post pictures and they'll say, what is this? And then there'll be all these comments from people who know what it is, and seeing it over and over actually has really helped me. And then I go for a walk and then I'd be, hey, I just saw that. Somebody just posted a picture of that. And it gives me more of a sense. And then you could also be somebody who posts the picture and says, hey, what is this? Yeah, that's what I did.
And we should also mention our friend from Cool Eco Community, Siobhan Lavelle, who is a gold mine of information. So if you ever get a chance to go and do one of the Cool Eco Community courses, I highly recommend it.
Could you put the name on the chat box, please? Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's week 5 is the one you were talking about, Nessa. Grow something you can eat, growing foraging food. Is that it? I posted it in the link.
That is, oh, that's one. Yeah, that's got a Facebook group which you can join about growing food, and they also help each other identify food they're foraging. And then there's some more resources in the 10th. Okay. I realize I'm putting up a lot of resources here, so your best bet is probably to go to the Facebook group. I'll post those up in complete form just after this webinar, and so they'll be there. But Sach is putting them up week by week, so when she gets to week 10, that'll have some good foraging information in it.
Nessa, just to be a little bit cheeky, if it's possible to share those links with me as well, I'll put them up on our website. So from the Biosphere Challenge page, we'll have all the challenges. So if people have missed any, they can go back and review them. And if we can have those links, that'd be fantastic. So it can become a complete resource. That'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good call. Which reminds me, actually, I meant to mention in between talks, we will be having a virtual rambling house on the 22nd of October to celebrate our Biosphere Challenge, and by then we'll have put together a full resource for you, so you can do this again with all your family and friends, or your school or your workplace. And so that's the 22nd of October. I'll put up a link now for that. So many links, so many resources.
Does everyone know what a rambling house is?
Probably not, actually. Good idea. So you can come along and sing a song, tell a story, share a little bit of nature knowledge. Dean will probably tell some terrible jokes. I mean, great jokes, and do a dance, anything that you like, basically. It's a traditional way of homemade entertainment. So back in the day, and probably still now in some places, people would go over to a local farmer's house and have something to drink and sing some songs and read some poems and tell some stories. So that's what we'll be doing online for this virtual rambling house on the 22nd of October. And that at that event, we will launch the full resource of the Biosphere Challenge. So
it's a week before All Hallows Eve, which is great. And obviously, if it's anything like the last one, there was a real strong nature theme flowing through the songs and the poetry and everything else that was brought. So yeah, it's great fun, good crack. And you get to meet other like-minded people, which is no harm at all. So
absolutely. Has anyone got any more questions for our speakers?
Susanna?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, thank you all. It was really very interesting, all the things that you have been sharing. And I'm really eager to go through all these links and now, and I don't know if I'm gonna get them all right, but yeah, it's nice to know that they would be on the Facebook group. I'm definitely super interested in all Celine's ideas and everything she was explaining, but I know I also have the chance to catch up with her in some other places. So I would actually love to ask Sophie a very particular, and maybe Nessa too, if you're doing this, the Rambling House, or for example, this art piece that you did there, I'm super interested with someone else is doing it, but I feel really hopeless when I try to do some idea. I feel like it's a very daunting experience, like all the time that you have to spend on it, the resources, the talking to the right people, and how you choose the community, and all. Obviously yours is the easiest, but all those resources, from personal resources to material resources, from the insurance someone was mentioning before, like how you connect with the council so that they can give you a hand and they accept whatever you are eager to do without other problems. So I don't know if you can answer to this, or any of you, that'd be lovely. Thanks.
I'll let Sophie answer this one. If you don't mind, Sophie.
I'm having a bit of an audio problem. I had to come in and out several times, so I was hearing a bit blurry. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We can
Susanna,
hear
just with
you.
regards to the council, finding who the local park superintendent is really handy. Talking to those guys, if there's an area that you want to work on, and having a conversation about it. So actually going to meet them, maybe meeting them on site, those sorts of things. It's finding the right person in the local authority, somebody who has the same, who can buy into your ideas. That's half of it. You're onto a winner. Isn't that right, Nessa?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I've fallen on my feet here. Team's been supporting this project the whole way through.
I'll type my response, yeah?
Sure, yeah, if you want to type that, and then I can read it out.
Put that in.
There's also opportunities for funding. So, I know there was the Local Agenda 21 Environment Protection Fund in Ireland. I think it's got a new name now in the last couple of years since I was involved. But, looking at those avenues to try and make it work financially, is always good. Putting in an application form. If you put in an application form to the local authority, having spoken to the parks people, then there's a good chance that if the person look at it is supportive of your idea, they'll give you additional backing as well. So that helps. No harm in asking for a bit of extra funding. And there's different departments. There's community section that would have funding. So it's pushing on a number of doors is what I would say.
Yes, I fully agree. Funding always be obtained for building a project. The difficulty more so is getting funding for maintenance work, which again, runs back into that, apprehension I seem to come across that, plants and anything else and anything natural decays, and there's a process, and it's maintenance thing that's more difficult. Everyone needs to be loving to, fund the building of something new. Once you have it built, maintenance. I put Siobhan Maher's email address into the chat. She's incredibly helpful. She's a public realm manager in Dublin. And I'd say that she would even if I'm mostly in Dublin, but I need to get to the right person, any other county council, I go through her as well. It's a good email address to have. She's great.
That's great, thank you. I hope those were helpful answers, Susanna. Yeah, feel free to get in touch with me anyway. I'll be able to give you a more coherent answer than I'd be able to right now anyway. I'll put my contact details in the chat as well.
Great, thank you.
Well, it's 25 to 9, and you've all been a very wonderful, wonderful audience of participants and wonderful speakers. I'll draw things to a close, but before I go, I will just remind you of our next 2 tasks. To create something that inspires love for our natural habitat, and then to feast on wild foraged foods. Feel free to get in touch for any tips or ideas on either of those. And hopefully I'll see you all at our virtual Rambling House on the 22nd of October. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I'll talk to you all again soon. Take care. Good night. Bye.
Thanks, Nessa. Well done.
Thanks, guys. It was wonderful again.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. It was really interesting. Great to see you, Celine.